Are you too busy? Too stressed out? Unhealthy? Then this is the place for you. Welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, where we help you create wellness and balance with a holistic approach that will work for you, even with the busiest of schedules, so you can live the life you want. And now, here's your host, Diane Randall.
Welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. I have a great interview for you today. My guest, Carla Lee Johnston, is here to tell us about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. She's going to talk about how they affect us and why it's important that we know where our food comes from when we are getting mixed messages from our government, from our environment, from all the aspects of society at this point. She's going to help us understand what's true and what's not true.
That's it. I am, Diane. I'm here to do my best to share what I call is more love on the planet.
Carla, can you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. My name is Carla Lee Johnston, and I'm with Carla Lee's Nutburgers One Team Humanity Foods, and I'm just like each one of us out there looking to sort through all of the information on what's good for us and what's not good for us. And this has been a subject that's dear and near to my heart. And so I'm out there as much as I can, having that conversation about what a GMO is and what it's doing to our body systems.
Well, I'm so happy that you are here today because I want you to tell us, what are we eating when it comes to GMOs? Are we consuming the proper food to support our health, or are we unknowingly putting our bodies at risk, our loved ones at risk? Tell us, what are we doing today?
So GMOs, they're not getting the press that they should, and we could connect a lot more dots if we have a lot more time, but GMOs are genetically modified organisms. A lot of people, if I ask, I do a lot of asking. I go to a restaurant and I say, does these corn tortillas have GMO in it? And which is a known crop for GMOs. And the waitresses kind of look at me with a dazed look in their eye. And so there's a lot of people that are not even aware that this is an issue and that it's actually dangerous for our health. So a GMO is a genetically modified organism. And it's the result of a laboratory process where genes from the DNA of one species are extracted and artificially forced into the genes of an unrelated plant or animal. So these foreign genes, they could be bacteria, they could be viruses, they could be insects, animals, and even humans. So what we're bringing into our body systems isn't like, an orange tree being sliced with a tangerine tree. These are things that are non-related genetic mutations that we are actually finding now genetically in our own DNA. So it's a serious subject that I say should be on any dinner plate across America. These should definitely be roundtable discussions so that we're all getting educated together. I was really excited in December, Diane, that we've had some big organizations stand up in the Netherlands, and we're getting ready there's a mass action crime against humanity lawsuit that's going to be filed on Earth Day next year, October 16th in 2016 in the Netherlands. And it's actually with a lot of our groups, big lawsuit that's going to make a huge historical difference, I think, and bring this subject, hopefully, if it makes it our way onto the news channels, the forefront discussion of what's happening with glyphosate and GMOs and what it's doing in a big time way to our health and the planet's health. This is not just something that's affecting our bodies. It's affecting every living species on our planet. Our bees, everything that's protecting us is actually being affected by GMOs and how it's getting into our water supply and our food supply, et cetera, et cetera. So
there seems to be a moratorium in Europe on genetically modified organisms. Why is it not the case in the United States?
Big lobby, big money, Monsanto, and a revolving door that's directly connected from our big pharmas into our FDA. And, there's a lot of dots to connect on this, Diane, but the bottom line is it's money, it's greed, and I could go so far as to even say this lawsuit that I was referring to is actually a tribunal that's putting them up for a crime against humanity, and against human health and the environment. So, there's a lot at stake here, and the agenda behind GMOs is far more than just, greed and profits. It's a really nasty, nefarious plan, and I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories or any of those types of things, but I can tell you that I've done enough linking of and connections in my own dot that I'm here to at least take my time to publicly speak about it and tell everyone in the audience, go connect the dots yourself. Let's take a look at this and recognize that knowledge is power, and it's really the first step in our sovereignty, our personal sovereignty, and in our collective sovereignty.
Can you tell us what some of the hard evidence is against GMOs and why they are a real threat to us?
Sure. So one of the most comprehensive studies that have been a contributory factor for a lot of the bans that you just referred to, Diane, that we're seeing around our world against GMOs was a Cirolini study. And that study has actually been redacted from our medical journals here, but very comprehensive study, 2-year study, that they dissected every single organ to really see what's happening. And just to make it just understandable, I guess, what we do know is that there are numerous studies now that clearly show a link in infertility, in mammary cancers, and prostate and glandular cancers, and a lot of other autoimmune. It's ripping our guts apart. It's destroying the microflora. We've got pictures of what's going on with our tummies, and there is no coincidence that we've got a pandemic rise in gluten insensitivity and gut type issues that are happening, and much of that is directly linked to what we're finding now in GMOs. We're finding it in mother's breast milk. I'm working with Zen Honeycutt Moms across America, and we're rounding up scientific data now for a similar type lawsuit here, hopefully, or perhaps joining. But we're finding it in the umbilical cords of our babies. We're finding it in the urine of our cancer babies. We've got so much evidence now that it's almost difficult to turn your eye or your heart away from the fact that it's very much something that's a serious matter that as parents, I feel like we have a responsibility to really do our homework and recognize that it's really difficult to find clean food these days. And when you start, connecting the dots, you realize just how difficult it is to actually get these darn GMOs out of our body.
But on the other side of the coin, I know I eat as much organic as I can, but I also talk to people who it's almost as if they have not been able to embrace or understand the real detriment that GMOs are impacting on us. I mean, it's very hard for some people to the point where the resistance is so deep that there's this back and forth. So I was wondering if you could share with me an approach that you have to people who are just very unconscious about what's going on and how you may get someone's attention.
Well, I think that we've conditioned a populace to. In fact, I had a rather heated debate with a woman, and I said, "Where are you getting your information from?" And she said, "Like the 5 o'clock news." And I just so hard for me to not laugh. It was so hard for me to go, "Oh my God, guys, do we recognize who's running that Muppet show?" And the fact that you aren't going to get. I mean, when you really start doing the homework, and I think if we tell people that these conversations are important enough for us to have with strangers, I think you find that there's not near as much resistance. For me, at least, what's been effective, like in this case, it was really hard for me to not, like I said, to not want to take an adversarial position with this. But I believe that ignorance is no longer bliss. It's actually deadly. And sometimes to really connect the dots and wake up to truth it's painful, because at one level it requires us, Diane, to do something about it. And I think at least for me with GMOs, I rarely take a really strong one-way stance. But in this case, this is such a detriment to our body systems, to our babies, to our world, our planet, that I feel like it's just one of those things that sometimes you just have to take a stand and recognize that, you're always going to have people that don't want to hear the truth, and, that have a very closed mind. And, Jesus said, dust the dust off your shoes and move on. And so there are times when you just have to recognize that until we start seeing the curve of the infertility, which we're already seeing. I mean, how many 30-year-olds do you know that are spending $100,000 to have babies? And, GMOs is directly linked to infertility. We're seeing the cows now and the animals, the agricultural. If you talk to farmers or you read studies on that, you'll see that, they can't even keep second and third generations anymore. The actual birth defect rates and the death rates from these animals that have been on this GMO feed. And of course, their lifespan's shorter. So we should be looking at that and recognizing this Cirolini study I was citing. If you extrapolate that out and what it's actually equating to for a child who starts on GMOs, we're going to start seeing our 8 and our 10-year-old children, our babies, actually getting sick and having huge issues with GMOs. We're finding hair in mouths of babies from GMOs. So, you can only do what you can do, and you can only hope that you do so in a way that encourages people to say, hey, don't believe me. I don't believe you should ever believe an expert or anyone just because they say something. I think you kind of listen to the resonance of what somebody's saying and see if it feels like there's some element of truth to it, because truth does have a defined frequency to it. It rings true. Something says, whether science or logic can confirm it, that there's something going on here. And I'm interested enough in this conversation that I'm going to hear it, listen, and then do my own homework. There's so much information now, Diane, available on the internet, available by credible MDs, PhDs, physicists, epigeneticists, out and out speaking against this. And if you've got the U.S. Organic Consumers Association, and you've got the World Health Organization, and you've got 400 scientists speaking to this and the lies around GMO that are being planted in the media and in our brains about the fact that it creates higher yields and that it's going to end world hunger, that's just flat out malarkey. And it's been proven by ISAT, World Health Organization, at the UN. And so UN's joining this announcement. They're involved with this. And so, when we get organizations that are that powerful, really, really going after, an actual crime against humanity, I would think that would be something enough to keep our attention, right? Or at least trigger something to say, I better check this out, because if it's hurting my babies, what mother really want to knowingly actually be feeding her child something that is detrimentally dangerous and deadly for their systems?
Like you said, we have to wake up to the fact that our best interests being taken for granted at this juncture. So if I want to start tomorrow, I want to change my life, I want to pay more attention to what I eat, what is the first step to waking up to not only the detriment, but what do I do? What do I eat?
Yeah, so there are maybe, I think it's 12. I think we just added apples to GMOs. So it's not like you've got a plethora of, that corn, alfalfa, cotton, canola oil, which is a man-made oil that's incredibly toxic to our body system, sugar beets. So that means the candy bars that you and I grew up on that were, I call them good, bad, not very good for us stuff. But today they're deadly. And so know what crops actually are infiltrating our food supply. Now, when you go out to fast food, you can almost, and even high-end restaurants are using these less expensive oils to cook with. So, that means find your favorite restaurants and make sure they're using olive oil. Make sure they're using, at the very least, oils that are not disruptive to the body system. These GMOs are making their way into our DNA. That's serious, Diane. That is really serious. And so, know what you're putting in your body, ask the questions. And what I love about it is when I say I talk to the waitresses, they're empowered to know that. When I tell them, guys, this is serious. And, I've asked managers to show me what oil they're using. And, you could call me a little radical on that side, but I do a lot of it just so that I can wake up that manager. And because that manager's got babies. And when they learn about that, they're surprised themselves. And I do believe that it's one heart, one, person, one bite at a time, that it's going to take for us to begin to liberate and integrate and unite on these really serious subject matters that have a long-term impact on our well-being as a humanity and as a planet.
And I see it happening already, as you said, with the lawsuit, with people uniting, with the labeling for what we eat. I think that's a beautiful thing. I do see that people are waking up and trying to take a stand, and I'm really hoping that things will change, because we all see the disease and all the terrible illnesses that are impacting the whole world, the whole country, but especially in the U.S.
Well, it's everywhere. And, Diane, what's really for me is kind of exciting on one level is that, maybe this is the kind of stuff that it's going to take for us to unite as a humanity, to get angry enough to recognize that these are direct, intentional acts, and they're detrimentally impacting us as a brother and a sister, and as families and as nations. And I think, you look at Chipotle. Chipotle is getting attacked now. And you look at other organizations. Campbell Soup just announced, I think it was today, that they are going to start labeling GMOs. And, they bought Plum Organics.
Oh, okay.
And Plum Organics is a benefit corporation. They're much like One Team Humanity that's here to make a difference in humanity. And I'm sure their sales have been deeply impacted because they've been funding Monsanto and the lobby against requirements for labeling. And, we list all those companies. And what's interesting is they just took a public stand and announced today that they're going to start labeling. That's a huge, huge step for Campbell's as well. I give them credit. My guess is that it was motivated by a huge loss in their revenue streams. But hey, if that's what it takes, I say we've got a voice and we vote with the soul of our money. And right now, that's the one thing that we have as a united family, is the fact that we single-handedly don't recognize what our united voice with our dollar can mean. We can single-handedly take these darn companies out because they're on balance sheets as well. They're corporations. So, I think when we recognize what power we really do have, Diane, it takes that hopelessness feeling away from us and empowers us to recognize that when we unite, there's really nothing that can stop us.
And Carla, I hear what you're saying. Remember when we were standing up and we didn't want the labels, but our government was going ahead anyway to side with not labeling.
237. Yeah,
to 237. But what I've seen is that you're right. With the people standing up and uniting, it was more powerful and impactful than us really waiting on the government to label our food. So I'm really happy about that. I used to feel helpless. I really did personally. But now I feel, like you said, there's powers in numbers. I literally see change. Not as fast as I may have wanted it, but I do see it, and I'm really happy about it. And I'm just so grateful there's people out there like you that are really telling the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if we catch 5 minutes, and we recognize, when I get asked sometimes to speak on national TV, it's like, how can I talk about something in a soundbite, because some of these conversations take more than a soundbite. And they are painful conversations sometimes because sometimes they're a little boring and and I try not to be that boring because it's not a laughing matter, but at one level, I think we can create enough momentum to put people on their own track. We have an internet connection stream that we did not have, and it's in my mind, it's consciousness's way of waking itself up, because it connects us to information that's outside of mainstream media, which is really the programming that, the global elite want us to stay infused in. I call it the matrix. I joke that the matrix doesn't care if you're for or against it, just so your attention's locked into it. So, I think this is what I love about what's happening now, Diane, is we have access to this information, and we've got the ability now to really get empowered as a humanity. And I think that's what we're doing right now. I think that some of this painful stuff that we're going through is an absolute bridge for us to be understanding that as brothers and sisters, there is no technology that's waiting. We are the technology and the answer we've been waiting for. We have everything we need now to say no, no, we're not going to put that GMO stuff in our body. And when we stop buying it, guess what happens? They stop making it.
Yes, they do. They stop making it. And I hear what you say about stepping outside of main media, which is really why I started this podcast, so that I could give my little bit of truth and different opinions versus what our media wants us to listen to. So I'm very, very grateful that the internet, the podcast, all these outside technologies are allowing us to have a voice. This is really great.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome that, unlike, like I said, I wouldn't have even known about that tribunal or the lawsuit and the press announcement in Paris, because our media outlets aren't going to show that.
That's right.
And so for me, it's like, wow, I'm going to fly to Paris or wherever the heck this is happening. I've reached out to every single one of those to link our scientific studies with their scientific studies. And, can we join the tribunal? Because the tribunal is for humanity. This is a crime against humanity. So can we jump on board? Why do our own? Why fix it if it's not broken? So if they've got what they need, and these are huge, huge, huge people with big revenues and big their own lawsuits, right? So why do it? We've got an incredible, I'm going to get a little maybe borderline here for the audience, perhaps not, but recognize that our court systems don't necessarily see us justice. I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm. But there's some committees way above some of the judges that sit on those benches that are being fed by, Monsanto. And we have to recognize on a deeper level that there is perhaps, I'll just plant that seed, perhaps there's a bigger agenda behind these GMOs. And I don't think I need to say much more than that, because when you do your own investigation, you're going to find plenty of things to start wrapping your mind and heart around. But it is important, and I think we hit the nail on the head. It's time for us to jump off of the Kim Kardashian 2-hour brain rot and spend that 2 hours putting some stuff into our hearts and into our family's knowledge base that can potentially make a difference in the lives of our loved ones and the people in our communities that are also being impacted by this. This is an economic impact too. This isn't just, people getting sick and dying. This is potentially hugely lethal for our planet and species as we know it on this earth.
Do you feel that all these shows, reality shows, are to distract us from the truth?
They're called a mass weapon of distraction, Diane. That's exactly what they're there for. They're here to keep us sheeple, deaf, dumb, and, worrying about the next Louis Vuitton bag. And I've been there and done that, Diane.
Exactly.
I've done it all. So.
I agree. Well, I think you've really given us a lot to think about, a lot to process, and some very good information. And I think you've given us enough about GMOs that we can go out and really educate ourselves on what's really going on, what we can eat and what we can't eat. I think that's important, like you said, to find out what can we eat.
Exactly. And we veered a little off, and I missed a really critical point, guys, I know organic costs more money, but if we're buying more organic, the cost will come down. And really the only way that you can defend yourself now against GMOs is to buy organic. So it's really critical right now. Go to farmers markets where you can still buy organic for less than you can buy it in the store. Make it a family fun event. They're fun. Farmers markets are a blast, and that supports the local people anyways. It's a great way of getting out and meeting new people. And organic right now is the most important thing that we can do for our bodies until we can get this darn stuff out of our food supply.
Yeah, when people tell me, they say, I can't afford organic, and I'm saying, can you afford to be sick? Can you afford the higher premiums that you'll pay when you have all these health conditions that you can't heal from eating bad food?
Well, and I call them slow kill techniques or slow cumulative techniques. If I handed you a shot glass and said, if you drink this, know that it's poison and that you'll die in 20 minutes, the likelihood that people are going to reach across that table and take that is slim to none. But when I hand you a daily regimen of GMOs and say, this is poison and it's going to kill you, then, if you can't take heed to that potential human health threat that's standing right in front of you, it is poison to our bodies, Diane, and it is a slow cumulative killer. And it's just no fun anymore to watch people that we know and love die way before they should be dying, and know that it's directly linked to our food supply. We can do something about that. We can. And that's what I encourage people to do is choose love for yourself and the people that you love, and go organic until we can figure out how to get this stuff out of our food supply.
Well, we'll leave it at that. That was a beautiful ending to a great conversation. Carla's information will be in the show notes of this podcast. So tune in and hear all about the genetically modified organisms. And Carla Lee Johnston, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you for your work in the world. Without people like you, we can't get this information out. So blessings to everybody, and feel free to look me up and send me a direct email, and I'll give you anything and everything I've got that may support you in your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. This podcast is sponsored by DianeRandallConsults.com. If you like this show, the best way to support it is by leaving 5-star feedback on iTunes. And please, feel free to email your questions, comments, and suggestions to feedback@DianeRandallConsults.com. Until next week, namaste.